Android Soo, Parallel Blue. Chapter 2. Kay followed Sue through the door of her room into the brightly lit hallway, then to a small elevator that took them down to the main level of enviro repair. They walked in silence to Sten's office door. After knocking on the door, it opened automatically, and they walked in to see Sten talking to two small gray androids, one male and one female, standing in front of her on the desk. The office was small but well organized and tidy. Though Sten was dressed for comfort as usual, Sue noticed she was wearing gold glitter nail polish, something she had never seen Sten wear before. "Take this info tab and get over there as fast as you can," said Sten as she handed a small info tab to the gray female, who immediately plugged it into the memory port under her left arm. Then she and the gray male walked down the stairs along the side of Sten's desk to the floor and left the office. "Where have you two been?" said Sten, looking over at Sue and Kay as they walked toward the small staircase. "We've got something to explain to you, Sten," said Kay as he and Sue climbed the stairs to the top of Sten's desk. "Explain later. I need you both at the Watercress Center as fast as you can get there." "Maybe you should send someone else if it's that urgent," said Kay. "This will take a little while to explain. Tink, take this info tab, find Dee Dee. Both of you get over to the Watercress Center." Something that Sue thought was an ornament sitting on one corner of Sten's desk stood up and walked over to Sten to take the info tab. It looked like the armature of a small early model android with only a head and hands attached. Sue stared at it in disbelief as it passed by her to get to the stairs. It made a small metallic sound as it walked down the hard stairs on its metal feet. "All right, start explaining," said Sten, sitting back in her soft chair. Kay began to explain what Sue and the other androids who came through the time portal told him about their ordeal. "And she says there are subtle differences about the things in her apartment, and that she has never seen me before today. That's why we think she may have come through the time warp to a parallel time and not the time she originally came from." Sten just sat there in silence for a minute. "The last time I saw you was when I sent you on a job to the Rutherford Hotel yesterday morning. You look the same to me as you did then. I don't know if it's true that I've come through to a parallel time, but there are certainly differences here. And you say you saw me yesterday morning, but I've been gone for 2 weeks," said Sue. Sten leaned forward and said, "Well, whatever has happened, I guess we'll just have to move on from here. So, Sue, are you still working for me?" "Certainly. You seem to have a lot of business. Would you be in need of any additional workers? The 4 androids who came with me may need jobs. I could use 2 more workers. Go talk to your friends and see if 2 will accept employment here. The other 2 can stay until they make other arrangements. Right now, all the android apartments here are being lived in. Lee and Lou live in one. They're the 2 small gray androids that were here when you came into the office. Dee Dee lives in the other room. You can talk to them to see if a couple of your friends can stay there temporarily." On the way back to her apartment, Sue asked Kay about Lee, Lou, and Tink, explaining that from the time she came from, these androids did not work for Sten. Lee and Lou have been working for Sten for only about 6 months. We sometimes refer to them simply as Lilu, because they often act in unison without discussion, seeming to read each other's minds. I heard about them before they started working here. They're kind of famous among other androids," said Kay. The story of Lilu became somewhat of a legend in Serapi. They were of the BX Small Android Series and were created 2 years before. While employed at a local shopping complex to keep the environmental systems in good repair, they saved the life of a small boy and his father by pushing them out of the way of falling debris. They were in different sections of the park in the middle of the complex, and even before the debris started falling, they came together where the boy and his father were standing to push them out of the way. Nobody knew how they communicated in this seemingly telepathic way. Androids were not created to communicate telepathically, and this behavior had never been noticed in any other androids. Right before Lilu did something in unison, they stared at each other for a couple of seconds, then acted in unison. They even finished each other's sentences. Tink is an LR1. Only 1,000 androids of this type were made about 6 or 7 years ago. They were made as a supposedly less vulnerable model for more dangerous kinds of work. All the mechanization is built into the metal structure and memory in the head, which is reinforced with a very strong plastic metal alloy. By not having an overlay of muscle and skin, it was thought these androids would be better for more dangerous types of work. But this model never sold well, so was discontinued, explained Kay. It turned out they weren't really less vulnerable, and of the 1,000 made, there were now only 53 left. When Sue and Kay entered Sue's apartment, Tish, Ed, Lycone, and Thought were sitting around the table discussing something. They stopped talking when the two entered. "We've been discussing what we want to do now," said Ed. "I talked to Sten about that," said Sue, "and she says she can hire 2 more workers, and you can all stay here until you find other living quarters." "Well, that works out fine then," said Tish, "because Lycone and I would like to work here. I was between jobs before I went through the time warp, and Lycone didn't like where he was working." "Thought and I want to try to get our old jobs back," said Ed, "if they exist in this parallel universe. If they don't, we might be back." Lee and Lou agreed to let Lycone stay with them until he could find a place of his own, and Tish stayed with Sue. Kay had his own apartment outside of Enviro Repair. He offered Ed and Thought a place to stay that night. The next day, as soon as the recharge lights shut off and Sue opened her eyes, Kay was again knocking on her door. "Time to get up and get back to work." Sue could hear Kay shout through the door. When Sue opened the door, Kay reached in, put his arm around her, and whispered into her ear, "We have a job to do." Startled, Sue jumped back and asked, "Why do you do that?" "Do what?" "Keep touching me like that." "I guess I just like being close to you. I never really thought about why I do it, and you never minded before," said Kay, sounding a little hurt. "It's not that I mind, really. I'm just not used to it. I've never seen androids behave like you do," said Sue, grabbing her work clothes and sensor wig. "I've seen lots of androids touch each other who like each other. It's quite common. But I forgot. You're not the Sue I know. And maybe things are different where you came from." Kay sat down at the table where Tish was already seated. "Will there be anything for me to do today?" asked Tish, hoping she would not have to sit around Sue's room all day. "You should go down to Dee Dee's apartment where Lycone is waiting. Sten wants the 3 of you to go out on a job together. She knows you and Lycone are experienced workers, but there may be some things that are different which Dee Dee can help you with." Tish slept in the only clothes she had, so she was ready to go. As Tish left the apartment, Kay said to Sue, "We, my dear, need to get over to the Rutherford. You apparently didn't quite finish fixing the cooling problem on the 17th subfloor yesterday, or so Quig says." "Who is Quig?" asked Sue. "She's the manager of the Rutherford," replied Kay. "Yesterday you said you thought someone else was the manager there, someone named Fan." It's amazing, thought Sue, that in this parallel time some small chain of events caused the manager of the Rutherford to be someone named Quig instead of Fan. "I'll change into my work suit and sensor wig," said Sue, waiting for Kay to step into the hall so she could change in private. Kay just sat at the table waiting. Sue stood there staring at him. "Well, come on then, get ready," said Kay. "Won't you give me a little privacy?" asked Sue. "Privacy for what?" "To change my clothes. Please, just wait in the hallway." Kay walked out the door and closed it. His behavior was beginning to upset Sue. Androids were created with a certain amount of modesty in accord with what humans are used to, and Kay just wasn't respecting that. When Sue had changed into her work suit and sensor wig, she walked out the door where Kay was dutifully waiting for her. He handed her an info tab. They walked in silence towards the transporter unit. when Kay said by way of apology, "I keep forgetting you're not the Sue I know." "And I keep forgetting that you think you've known me for 3 years," replied Sue as they stepped into the transporter.